The most logical step up from Formula First is to Formula Ford. 110 horsepower, here we have the works Van Diemen chassis, and this formula had been the first stepping stone for the last 20 years before Formula First came along. Moving up from there now, we have this new formula, Formula Vauxhall Lotus, 160 horsepower on racing tyres, but like the concept of Formula First, only one chassis permitted. Up to Formula 3 long established now as an international training ground, and here chassis and engines are free, and in this case we have the Eddie Jordan Racing Reynard Volkswagen, 170 horsepower but very sophisticated. The final step, a lot of power, 450 horsepower, Formula 3000, here the March DFV of Onyx Racing, very exciting international formula, a lot of power, but we'll start with Formula Ford.
Formula Ford 1600, a second step on the ladder after Formula First, and this a very sophisticated step. The suspension is all high technology, the gearbox is a racing gearbox. Now the drivers have a choice of gear ratios for every circuit they want to go to. They have a huge range of springs, anti-roll bars and suspension settings to play with. They've got another 30 horsepower up on a Formula First, 110 horsepower on these Ford 1600cc engines. It's a formula now which is all about adaptability, all about a driver being able to select the best settings to get the most out of his chassis. And this Snetterton circuit really does work the chassis.
The relative freedom of the Formula Ford regulations allows the designers to use a very sophisticated suspension layout. They do use a conventional double wishbone front suspension, but the spring and damper unit is mounted inboard, operated by this push rod, allowing as clean an airflow as possible and therefore the highest top speed. It also means that the anti-roll bar can be mounted solidly here, just behind the dash panel.
Leading down the infamous Russell bend, which really should be taken without even a feather of the throttle, pulling 6,000 on the exit. The rev limit in these engines, about 7,000. Bridges, stab the brakes, down the third, in, a little bit sideways. Check the revs on the exit, 6-4. Good, braking, steer, second. A little bit of oversteer in, but then hard on the power. Use all the runway. That's common use. Really, we should be braking about 75 before we flick right the S's. Hard on the power. Use the road, up to third. Flat through the bomb hole. Let the car run. Really beautifully balanced chassis, set up by Derek Higgins, the works Formula Ford Van Diemen driver. And now we finish another lap at Snetterton in a very sophisticated single-seater.
Whether he's been karting, or like myself, just attended a racing driver's school, the young driver must eventually move into a national single-seater series to make his mark. 20 years ago, there was only one choice, Formula Ford. Now, there are 6. So where do we start? Well, the lowest powered is the 73 horsepower Formula First. First seen 4 years ago, it's now well established as a beginner's formula. It introduced the concept of a one-make formula where every driver is supposed to start with equal equipment. Value for money, the Formula First really can't be beaten, but you don't have to do it. If you've got the budget, you can move straight into Formula Ford, now in its 25th year, running 107 horsepower Ford engines and a free choice of chassis. All cars running on this set treaded tyre. But now at this level, there's a new choice, the 112 horsepower Vauxhall Junior formula. This formula is set to run on slick racing tyres if it's dry, something our young karter has already experienced. Moving ahead, we now have 3 choices of formula for the more experienced junior. All introduce wings to our young stars and all run on slick tyres. Formula Renault is now in its 3rd year in Britain. It provides 130 horsepower and a free choice of chassis. Going back to the single chassis concept is Formula Forward, producing nearly 150 horsepower. This is also now in its third year, and it's Brands Hatch's big brother to Formula First. And like Formula First, it concentrates on really good value for money racing. Moving up to Formula Vauxhall Lotus has 160 horsepower. It's another single-make formula and is now well established in its fourth year. Let's first look at that choice between Ford and Vauxhall Junior.
Formula Ford really has come a long way in these last 25 years. This is the very latest 1991 Works Van Diemen, and a team that runs these famous blue and yellow colours that have won major championships in 5 of the last 6 years. On these skinny, treaded racing tyres, these damp, greasy conditions really are the worst. But at least the young driver doesn't have to decide which type of tyre to choose. The treaded racing tyre operating both wet and dry. But what the young driver in Formula Ford does need to do is to get the most out of these highly sophisticated chassis. They're almost miniature Grand Prix cars. The driver can change springs, dampers, anti-roll bars. There's a 4-speed racing gearbox to change gear ratios. And really a young driver will learn every aspect of a racing driver's profession